Hello and welcome to Border Crossing, essential information and opportunities for international businesses with Chip Hobecker. These podcasts are designed to help you get a better understanding of some of the most important current issues and problems that affect businesses. Chip will examine the key points, help you to see the advantages and disadvantages, and provide you with any help sheets and support that you need. And just so you know, Chip heads up both the consulting division and the turnaround and restructuring practice for the firm Rehmann in the US. He has served as a court-appointed receiver, a chief restructuring officer, and as a fiduciary in international, federal and state proceedings in the US. He's also a board member for the National Association of Federal Equity Receivers, where he heads up the International Committee, and he's a fellow of Insol International. If you want to get in touch with Chip, he can be contacted via the Rehmanns website or on LinkedIn. We hope you enjoy this podcast. In this podcast, we discuss the difficult issue of partnership disputes with Chuck Story. Chuck manages complex fraud investigations for public and private sector entities, and he leads Rehmann's background, fire investigation and digital forensics divisions. He provides a suite of professional investigative tools to help clients identify and prosecute fraud. Hello, Chuck. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. We are here today to talk about what you're up to at the moment, which is corporate investigations. And I just want to know more about it. So, first of all, you were in the FBI. Is Rehmann exactly like working at the FBI?
Exactly not so much. There are some similarities. I will emphasize the similarities being I had a great team in the FBI and I have a great team at Rehmann. So those are easy ones. And then also I would liken the independence of a responsibility of how I do investigations and beginning with the end in mind. A lot of overlap.
Oh, I just thought it was going to be more Secret Service than that arrangement.
Different tool sets, different powers, if you will, and authority, but ultimately, there's definitively differences between the two.
Oh, okay. So in terms of your investigations then, since they're not like the FBI, so what do you investigate and what kind of thing do you help people with? It's a kind of an interesting concept, corporate investigation. So explain it to me.
For sure. So within corporate investigations, we conduct broad range of investigative, investigations. Sorry for the pause there. But some are completely non-financial and pertain to HR matters or personnel matters, operation matters. And then a significant portion of our investigations do pertain to financial issues that are happening within a company or a partnership, or a lot of times involve litigation support or ongoing suits. It could involve partnerships or maybe a dissolution of a company or a partnership, asset tracing.
Yeah, so something like fraud maybe, or if you're worried that somebody's taking money away or you're worried about somebody's behaviour, would that be the kind of thing then you'd help with?
Certainly, that is a portion of the financial investigations we conduct, whether there's allegations or suspicions of fraud or embezzlement. But I would say a lot of our recent engagements just are going in to dig a bit deeper into the financials about specific matters. There may not have been an allegation that a family member or a partner stole money or had poor intentions, but there was a suspicion or belief that they may have obtained more assets or more money than the others. So not necessarily an embezzlement or not necessarily a fraud matter, but financial forensics ultimately, in my mind and how we approach things, are digging deeper into specific topics, if you will.
Well, let's focus on the sort of partnership area, because I know from my own experience, partnerships can be really difficult and, sometimes more complex than marriages. As a lot of my friends who are partners say, like, managing their partners is infinitely more difficult than going home. So it is an area where there's a lot of issues that can come up when you're working with people so closely for such a long period of time. So how would you go about investigating something in a partnership?
Ideally, both partners, or however many partners are in the partnership, are coming to the table in good faith. So that would be the first step to make sure we have access to all the information we need to make an unbiased assessment and examination of what's going on. Also, shout out to Stephen Covey, right? So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, beginning with the end in mind. So we go in and discuss with the client or prospect what's sort of the standard that was expected. What was the behavior that was expected to have occurred?
Right.
And a lot of times that pertains to operating agreements that hopefully are in place and hopefully have sufficient detail. And then you start to look backwards. Okay, what transactions occurred? How were the partnership matters handled and managed? Were they handled and managed appropriately in comparison to the standard of the operating agreement? So oftentimes that is really the gold standard per se, or the bar for which we're measuring things against, whether it be truly measuring the economics of how the partnership was handled or the behavior of those involved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. But what if one partner, sorry, I'm being devil's advocate here, but what if one of the partners or a couple of the partners are worried about the other one and they're not sure what's going on? Do you have to have everybody involved before that investigation, or could you start to investigate it on behalf of a couple of the partners because they're concerned about the behavior of one?
We've actually had those situations before. So as long as we have access to the appropriate information, then we can conduct an investigation. If we have a certain level of privilege that's established with a prospect or a client, investigator privilege, and oftentimes we engage through their respective counsels, which we layer on attorney-client privilege as well. So very quiet about what we're doing, but the key is that we have the information to examine and evaluate.
So you could keep it quiet unless you went to court, and then obviously it would have to be disclosed. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
But is it not also quite personally intrusive? I mean, in the UK and over Europe, we have really tight sort of privacy rules now, which are coming over the last few years. In the US, is that not the case as well? Would that not interfere with your ability to investigate?
It absolutely is a factor in what we can obtain and examine.
Yeah.
And those are all upfront questions and topics that we discuss with a prospect or a client to make sure we're in compliance with all the respectable or the relevant laws. Because quite frankly, we don't want to get clients in trouble, and nor do we want to be in trouble. We want to generate a work product that they find value with. But if it's derived from illegal means, that's no good for anyone.
Right. So if you've produced a report for, say, these 2 partners, and they're convinced that there is an issue because of the evidence that you've gathered for them, is it done in a way that can be used in court? Is that the normal route that people go down?
The client, I would say it's a 50-50 chance if they want to pursue and criminal charges and take our report to law enforcement. I can tell you the way we document our approach as well to an investigation mimics fundamentally a prosecution memo. And so It very much reads in a manner that prosecutors and law enforcement and the judicial system is familiar with.
Okay.
It tells a story. Ultimately, we're storytellers, and it's not based on our own assumptions. Ideally, it's based on the evidence we've collected.
Okay, so is court the sort of normal route that people want to go down? Or, I mean, is there a route for mediation in all this once people have got the evidence with their partners?
Absolutely. Oftentimes, our reports are used in mediation. And I would at times reference our practice as investigative mediators, because we ultimately oftentimes dig through bias that exists that are unfounded, and we give a little clarity for decision making.
I mean, the thing is, though, are you not being paid by one of the other parties? And so you could be seen as sort of being biased to that person. So wouldn't that undermine any mediation that might occur?
Great question. We've had to sort of punch through those allegations before, and our investigative process has generally spoken for itself. that we take an unbiased approach and collect appropriate information that is neutral,
Right.
but tells its own story. So ultimately, the evidence speaks for itself. We just document and assess, examine, and give observations. Ultimately, at times, it's going to be the court that may give an opinion, or the attorneys involved that will marry our information with various legal statutes to come up with their argument. But ultimately, our job is to be an unbiased observer and tell a story.
Yeah, and just be really honest about what you're presenting.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. If I came to you and said, could you write this? You wouldn't do that for me. So.
Well, I tell you, a statement I've made to several clients is, you may not like my answer, but do you like our work product? Because again, I'm not going to lie for you. Oh, we're not going to present.
I got a list of things.
But ultimately, it's, are you happy, and do you basically respect the unbiased, transparent process?
So go on, give us an example. It's always better when I've got examples. So give me a couple of cases that you've worked on. Actually, it's just being nosy. I want to know what you've been up to.
Oh, for sure. So we've talked a lot about partnerships in this discussion, and that seems to be a theme lately, whether it be allegations amongst partners of one or more taking more than the other, or surreptitiously paying personal expenses and incurring personal expenses through the partnership. So it's identifying where money may have been extracted inappropriately. So that's an example that's occurred recently.
Right.
As well as basic, and these are basic calculations for excess distributions or capital withdrawals.
Right. Yeah.
And again, that kind of goes back to the operating agreements, and were they documented well? Was there sufficient detail? And again, many people can read operating agreements, and many people can read financial statements, but then telling the story of how it actually occurred is a little bit of our niche, that we can put it all together so it is well communicated as to, okay, this is the totality of what happened.
Yeah, it's the who said what to who and when and how it was interpreted. It's all those nuances, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
So, I mean, it must be quite difficult when people come to you, because they must be quite angry, surely. I know I'd be fuming if I thought my partner had done something that he shouldn't have done at work. So how on earth do you kind of bring people down when they come stomping into your office? It's totally unfair.
They're all humans. We all are. So emotions at times are high, but you've got to let people communicate, and you have to be a good listener and let them vent if they need to vent. But then ideally you rein everyone in to, okay, we have to look at the facts. Emotions won't solve anything, and emotions won't help you in your decision making. So once you can get an ear, then you can, I hopefully can de-escalate and focus them on a process of solutions.
So you're quite understanding then. It must be quite so upsetting for people. You must have to really be quite kind to them when they come in. Do you find that's the case in the way that you work with your clients?
Just fundamentally have to be sympathetic. We're all human, and we all have emotions that can overtake us at times and blind us to reality. And so at times, the individual coming that may be fuming and feel they're wrong, they may too have some responsibility in what happened. And so at some point, I've got to communicate to them that they may have some responsibility in what has occurred. It doesn't justify maybe what the other individual did, but it allows them to see the totality of the picture.
Yeah, it's an honest and true picture and a fair picture of what happened. And I guess you also get the opposite, where people wonder whether they're imagining it and maybe come to you because it's got to a point where they're thinking, well, maybe I'm not imagining it, or am I going mad? That sort of situation. Do you find people come to you like that as well, and you can help them actually see the reality and make it clear for them?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Prospects will come with a biased story that they have built and is based in assumptions, and what they know and believe to their hearts of hearts has happened. And as you talk them through, okay, well, why? What has gotten you to this point? And you talk them through the fact pattern that may or may not support their assumptions and their story. And so that's sort of how we break down, okay, the likelihood of A happening, or the likelihood of B happening, or, C probably didn't happen. And then we can break down, okay, well, we need to obtain this type of information to support the allegation of A or support the allegation of B. And, at times prospects or clients have come to us asking about engagements. And not that I ever want to steer away from completing work, but at times I've been I'm always super transparent, but transparent with these prospects and say, hey, listen, the value we can add may not help in your recovery, possibly of embezzled funds, because of ABC. Maybe there's a variety of things. Maybe the person doesn't have the money to repay them. Maybe there aren't assets to recover to repay money that's been stolen. So there's a balance that I have to make sure I employ to, I want referring clients. I want happy clients. And if I just take on work that ultimately doesn't provide value, probably not a very good referral source.
No, it's not. No, I completely understand that. But overall, would you say it's a good investment? If you look at what you get back from having a situation clarified, in most of the cases that you deal with, investing in your services, do you feel that your clients get a lot back for what they're investing?
I believe so. Of course, I'm slightly biased in that statement, but that is also...
We're asking for a true statement here.
Yeah, but that has been affirmed to me from discussions with clients who have came back to me and said, hey, your report helped us avoid a trial, which would have been very costly. And so it basically forced or gave them, the client, an upper hand to go to mediation, which was less costly than what they could have incurred in a full-on trial.
Yeah, and the stress as well. I mean, trials are hugely stressful. You kind of want to know what your ground is before you get that far, don't you?
I got to tell you, that situation has occurred numerous times, where ultimately a real clear report allows for both sides not to think one side has written a report in a biased manner or the other side. It's truly a third-party observation. And you really can't debate certain things. There may be some interpretation, but that's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to interpret the law. I'm here to give you facts. And so it removes any bias and has helped steer matters to mediation for sure. And just resolution, steer parties to resolution. Ultimately, we're problem solvers and hopefully help in resolving.
And get to the end of it quicker rather than dragging it on. So just to summarize then, first of all, how can people avoid getting into these kind of dispute situations with partners in the first place?
Great question. My experience thus far is have operating agreements with sufficient detail across a variety of scenarios that a life of a partnership may experience. And so investing on the front end, designing an operating agreement that covers all these various scenarios with your respective counsels should assist in alleviating a lot of problems that we're seeing. Another example was an engagement we supported a partnership in, and it had to do with a partner from the partnership and an employee from the partnership. And so not only did we have to evaluate some of the financial transactions involving that partner, but also we had to conduct a number of in-person interviews. Fundamentally, very similar to what I did for many years in the FBI, just in-person interviews. Obviously different topics, not necessarily a crime, but certainly around some potential civil litigation matters. And ultimately, our report again, reflected facts, reflected people's experiences, and was presented in a manner and told the complete story, which ultimately allowed for the partnership to, I'll use the term amicably, extract or dissolve that particular partner's ownership interest and avoid a long, drawn out trial of sorts, if you will, and where ultimately it was resolved through a mediation process.
So you're not allowed to use handcuffs and a bright light then?
No, that's frowned upon. That's frowned upon. So,
really?
Yeah,
Shame.
yeah. Not in real life. Yeah. TV, maybe.
And finally, how should people approach it if they do find themselves in that situation?
The first stop should be with their counsel and get a game plan, a legal game plan. And then, of course, I'm going to pitch that the next stop should be a call to us. But ultimately, it's very much a team approach between Rehmann CIS and my team and the respective counsels. We've got to be step lock to make sure we all are beginning with the same goal. But counsels first.
Honestly, Chuck, that's been really, really helpful. So it's been really good to see you. And you take care.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining Chip for this podcast. If you want to get in touch with Chip or any of his guests, please contact him through the Rehmann website, www.rehmann.com, or on LinkedIn. All views expressed in this podcast are individual opinions and do not constitute professional advice. Thank you.